All right. Okay, let's begin. I hope everybody's having a good day so far. This is International Companion Animal Network. This is our live with the International Equine Professionals, and this is our Get to Know. So thank you so much to the IEP, we'll just shorten it to the IEP because acronyms are so much easier than big, huge sentences. Thank you for being a part of our community. And I love all of your posts about horse welfare. And I love about seeing how you're promoting educational awareness on horses and positive reinforcement on horses. And I would love to learn more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you.
And wait a second. Sorry for the toddlers in the background. My nieces and nephews are over.
Oh, yes, you said, right. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you for having IEP on. It's a really great opportunity. And obviously, we're a really proud member of ICAN. I agree with you, acronyms all the way, because in explaining who we are, we have International Equine Professionals, that's us. We're a sister organisation to International Canine Behaviourists. So there's another International Feline Behaviourists. And we all fall under the umbrella of International Society of Animal Professionals. So there's ISAP, ICD, IFB, and IEP. So that makes it easier. But no, it doesn't.
Okay, so let me, I'm gonna help you out. So what you have, we have the International Canine Behaviorists, which is the ICP. You have International Feline Behaviorists, which are for the kitty cats, for IFP. Yeah. And then you have International Equine Behaviorists for the IEP. So it's a three-pronged situation.
Kind of, but the difference between the equine side and the other two is that our name is International Equine Professionals, whereas they are kind of keep theirs to International Canine Behaviorists and Feline Behaviorists. And the reason for that really is because there are so many professions in the equine world, from farriers to vets to behaviourist trainers, equine assisted therapy to riding instructors and charities. There's such a wide range. And our founder, Brigitte Barton, who you know, wonderful woman, she felt that it would be better and give more opportunity if we opened it up to all professionals and students as well.
Well, and that's a fantastic point, because I think about the horse world. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Oh,
I was just making sure, because sometimes the Zoom, it kind of freezes between the two.
Right.
So
no way to finish, you're good.
Okay. Okay, great. So what I just want to point out, because I know even I live in Calgary, Alberta, and we are very much a horse-centered area. Unfortunately, we have a rodeo every year. We have like a big, huge stampede, but that's a whole different animal cruelty situation that we probably shouldn't get into here. But it is an animal cruelty. But ranching and horse riding, we have the Spruce Meadows horse championship competition. We have assisted animal therapy. We have horse sanctuaries where there's animals that are saved from the horse meat trade or from horrific abuse conditions. And so even just a little bit that I know and that I've dealt with professionally and personally, you know, as a child growing up, I volunteered at stables. I did horseback riding lessons. And I was just thinking about how many disciplines there is with horses that we just don't even think about.
This is very true, and you've named quite a few there that you don't come across maybe in mainstream, but there are, and I think that it's great to know that your community is more equine centered, because this is something that I think across the world there's still a massive problem with it. The horse world is very far behind, even the dog world, which still has problems. I think so. There's a long way to go, and it's. I think in a lot of areas across the globe, it's still entrenched in traditional methods. And don't get me wrong, because I was in that place. I grew up like you, started to ride very, very young age, went and volunteered at the stables, then became full-time employee at the stables. It was all traditional. That's how I learned. But just to give you a tiny backstory, having owned my own horses, I then got involved in the corporate world. Life kind of went that way. And then, and I know you'll appreciate this, had to give up work due to a chronic pain condition. So that's the point at which I thought, right, I've been forced into this situation. What's my passion? Well, it's horses. Don't know if I'll be able to get involved with that anymore. So let's go with dogs. And I decided to retrain in dog behaviour. And that's where my journey started. And that's back in 2009, when I learned that there's a lot more knowledge now about how and why animals behave the way that they do. And that there is a much better way to live alongside these animals, which, you know, they go through a lot at our hands, I think. And yeah, so I started that journey, but deep down inside, it's always been the horses for me. So I've come back.
Well, I might be repeating your journey. Taryn, the other co-coordinator of ICAN, she has adopted a horse named Jedi, and she was so disappointed that she couldn't be here. She's on vacation right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because she wanted to be involved because she has so many questions about horses for you. And she, for her, she does a lot of positive reinforcement training with her horse to help desensitize him to, like, one thing that she did with Jedi that I watched is he was scared of bags flying in the wind. And so when she'd take him, you know, she'd take him for walks and he'd be scared of these bags. So she showed videos of her desensitizing him to bags flying in the wind. And I was just thinking, how many horses don't have that opportunity, who have a caring individual? They're forced to go through the motions. And when I volunteered at the stable, that was one thing that I noticed, that the horse was scared. Nobody cared. They're just being, you know, hit or whatever, and then put in the stable until they're next in rotation.
I think you bring up an excellent point there. Go on to a kind of, I'm going to say standard yard. If your yard is forward thinking, then I follow it. But you go to a normal yard and you have horses kicking behind doors, and they're not willing to stand at the mounting block, and they just kicked another horse in the back. And it's always the naughty horse, the bad horse, the stubborn, he's taking the mick out of you, all of these things you classically hear. And actually, no, that's not the case. They're trying to tell us something. They're always trying to tell us something. And it's just that they need us to listen. And I actually watched a really good video clip from a wonderful positive reinforcement equine trainer called Melanie Watson a while ago. And she was helping a horse who had been taken up onto the yard, but was kicking the stable door like mad. And they just assessed the situation and looked at, okay, what could be triggering this behavior. And it turned out it was because he couldn't see his mate. And there was like a corner in the yard. They put him in this stable. He couldn't see his mate. They moved him 4 doors down. Fine. You know, that they stood back and looked at what is wrong with this horse. Why is he behaving in this way? He's got a reason. They've always got a reason.
Well, and definitely, that could be my side probably. Oh, it is. I have a medicine ball that I put my feet onto because it's nice and comfy, and I realized that I have a big microphone right next to it. So I figured, sorry about that. You know, but yeah, no, I was just thinking about that, and how we say the dog or the cat is naughty. Like I have 3 cats, and they all have behavioral concerns because they're rescues. And you know, you can easily just say the cat is wrong. The cat is scratching the furniture because they are a naughty cat, or the dog is chewing on the couch because they're a naughty dog. But actually they're not. That's not the root cause. And I was talking to my sister about that, the toller's mother, about how children's emotions are they're obviously different species. We're all very different species, but how we have to pay attention to their emotions to then help them. And that's a big thing is with, I know obviously children are one species. Well, I think children are their own like interesting species in their own selves. But children and humans and dogs and cats and horses, if we don't pay attention to the root cause of what's driving their behavior, whether it's frustration or it's wanting to be part of a social group. The behavior will only increase, and that'll be influenced even more by our behaviors. And so I think we forget that, like, if the horse is peeking at the stable and they smack the horse, that actually has it, which is a very common thing, or they shout at the horse, or they kick the stable door to say shut up and get on with it, which is again very common things that I've seen in the ranching community here. When I worked at the stable, and people don't understand that there's an emotion that drives that behavior, and there's a root cause that drives that behavior, and you can reinforce a behavior, but you cannot reinforce an emotion. You can influence an emotion.
Yes, and I think that's it. You can influence an emotion, and I think this is a topic that came up a while ago on one of the forums, and big discussion about it. And actually, I think you're right. You can influence it if you've got maybe a horse that's in the field where there's been shooting. Then by just saying, well, crack on with it, or you're being stupid, or I'm going to smack you, get on, go away. Yeah, whip, I'll spare you, you'll go then. These things, just intensifying the negative emotions surrounding that environment or at that time of day or whatever it might be that's been associated with it. So I think you're right. And I think with the emotional intelligence and emotional experience, it's something that I've tuned in a lot to Andrew Hale and Kim Rofi and the whole clan. And it absolutely applies across the board to all animals. And it's something that I'm keen for IEP to have a focus on, because whilst obviously we're big proponents of positive reinforcement, I think there are some people in the equine community who are wanting to make a transition, watching some videos on YouTube maybe, and going ahead and doing the positive reinforcement, and that's really great. I totally commend that. These are the types of people we want to talk to, because what the behaviours we're actually asking during that training, is that comfortable for that animal? Is it something that means something to that animal, or is it an emotional conflict because there's a really great reward there, but I've got to do X, Y, Z to get it? So it's like wrestling emotionally. So it's not then a good experience, as you know. So I think there's a lot to delve into. And
well, I was just reading some. You have fantastic posts. You have a lot of posts on horse welfare and about horse emotions, and I really appreciate those. And I was thinking a lot about how one reason why maybe horsemanship and horse welfare and force-free training with horses has not improved is because people see horses as a property. Whereas dogs and cats are a family. Horses are property. And so how we treat them, even like putting them into the trailer. And so, when I was a child, I did a lot of horse riding, and they'd be like, oh, the horse would refuse to go in the trailer because it's scared to go in the trailer. And they're smacking the horse and pushing it through. I was like, why? I was a teenager, so I couldn't say anything, but I was like, why don't you just take your time with the horse? The horse is scared, but because we see them as a property, we can treat them differently.
And I think maybe that's one reason why the equine world has lagged behind a little bit, is because there is that financial element. A lot of horses fulfill a financial need. They make money. The racing community, the eventing community, they make money. So I think one inspirational person that I learned a lot from, and I still do, is one of our members, Kate Blackmore. She works in a yard down in Devon, and she actually revolutionized the yard, and by kind of educating them in this way. And it's a fantastic place now. She's got other projects which I'll maybe tell you about later. But I said to her, how do you get people who are so focused on the financial gain from the horse and their ego to listen and take that approach? And she said, well, that's it, because ultimately when you take this approach, your financial gain is likely to be a lot more, because as you said earlier, you have a behavioral issue, you approach it like that with whips and the forcing and the shouting and the yelling, and it's just going to get worse and worse. So that horse isn't going to perform very well for you at the end of the day. So yeah, she really, I don't know, that I thought that was a very good way to get across to some people who maybe aren't totally focused on the emotion of the animal.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because it's finding ways for human behavior change. And that's a really, really big point, is how can we, because as force-free advocates and animal welfare advocates and professionals, we know in our own certifications and qualifications why we should be doing this, but telling the person who just has a dog or a cat or a horse why, they might just say, well, you know, you're blowing hot air up, you know. But it's finding a way that we can motivate them to say, okay, you're going to have potentially a happier horse, a horse that lives longer, a horse that is less fearful of a trailer. You're going to find the daily life examples, a horse that can then easily be recalled back from the hay bale, you know, a horse that can be not spooked so easily, a horse that can be okay with the dog being next to it. And so it's finding ways to tell people, hey, we're here to help you. We're not in any way antagonizing you or trying to, you know, control you or change your mind. Well, we are trying to change your mindset, but trying to change how they see the animal, not change who they are.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and I've fallen foul of it myself on more than one occasion. You know, trying to have this conversation, trying to maybe ask somebody to be a bit more open about the way that they do things, because, okay, this is tradition, but maybe there's another way. And sure, we know that positive punishment works. It does work because it causes pain and fear. But if there's a way to do things that is kind as well, so that the animal is enjoying something as much as us, why would we not do that? As well, here in Britain, we're known as the nation of animal lovers. There are some who don't demonstrate that quite as well as they should. So, you know, it's very difficult.
It is, because I feel that unfortunately what happens is I'm trying to rephrase it. So again, like this, so what I find happens if people who abuse animals often are abusive in other ways in their own life. And so it's a big thing with gender-based violence. And so that's a whole other topic as well. But I always think about how, you know, animals are in our care. We have to be kind, because that's what we would want for them. And also horses are a very social animal. And that's one big thing that I think people forget, is they put them in a stable overnight, and that's fine, but that's actually not fine for their social behaviors. And because they are a herd-based animal. And so the more that we can educate about their natural behaviors, about how they want to be within a herd, how we can still recall them and go for the, you know, go on rides with them, but at the end of the day, they need to be with their herd to help them decompress, to help them feel like they're, you know, they're a part of their family. So it's using these behaviors to kind of educate, right? And that's one thing that I know that you're really good about. And what I love about your post is you're helping educate a lot of people.
Thank you. Well, that's really reinforcing to hear. And it's, I think sometimes these infographics they pack a punch, and kind of looking at what people respond to, it seems to be that they are the things. They're a quick message and they get the message across. But talking about, you know, the ethology, and that, this is something that I think that as a community, we can learn from each other, because there are people that specialize in the ethology of an animal, of a species, and there are people that specialize in nutrition and in physical health and in rehabilitation. And with the best will in the world, there's not a person who probably knows it all. So if we can share that knowledge and pool it, for the benefit of the animals, at the end of the day, we all learn a little bit more about what makes up the whole animal, because that's what we need to look at when we're just living with an animal. We need to look at the whole animal, and especially when you've got behavioural issues. So, I think that's one thing that we find works very well, is that we'll pick each other's brains. And
which makes me very excited, because I think I was just thinking about how you're talking about helping the whole animal. And that's one thing that with animal behavior that we should always be doing is that, if that dog is mouthy, or that cat is vomiting their food, or, if the horse is unable to eat, or any of these things, we have to take an all-round approach, which is kind of like, what's their diet? How much are they exercising? Are they exercising too much or too little? Do they have stimulation? Do they have lack of stimulation? Do they have positive reinforcement? Are they scared of something? Are they able to express these natural behaviors, which is again a part of the 5 welfare freedoms, 5 welfare needs and 5 welfare freedoms, animal freedoms. And so I always think about it like, we have to take an all-around approach as a professional, but now you have a group of professionals that you can actually propose and say, hey, we can help you as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a massive learning curve the whole time. And one of the things that came up quite a bit when IEP was formed, which was the back end of 2019, there were a couple of comments about another organisation, really. But actually, I think, can there ever be too many if we're all speaking this message, which is a positive message that needs to be heard? Can you have too many? I'm not actually sure that you can. We're not in competition with any other equine organisation. In fact, we like to work with the other ones so that we can just spread the message further, really.
Yeah, when I moved back to Calgary, that was my biggest concern, because I was in Chengdu for 8 years in China, in the city of 18 million, and I was the only foreigner trainer I had, which was like,
Wow.
Yeah. And I was the only foreigner trainer with qualified in behavior. So
gosh,
there was Chinese trainers, but they were not qualified. They were taught old traditional methods.
Yeah.
So I had a niche market. I had a very niche market. And then I came back to Calgary, and I was like, I had to have my surgeries for endometriosis. And I was like, oh dear, because we're inundated with trainers here. The city is full of trainers, and they're full of different trainers. And I was like, I felt that imposter syndrome of, should I begin again? And so I completely understand, is like, we do need more organizations, but we need to work together. And I think that's a big issue, is a lot of people feels like a competition, and that's one thing that happened when I came here, is some people were like, yeah, you're my competition, I'm not going to work with you. And I'm like, and I had that for 6 months consecutively, and I was trying to deal with chronic pain, which I thankfully have now resolved, but I had chronic pain, severe chronic pain, and having people tell me that you're my competition, don't continue, don't start. And so I can understand the severe challenges that, starting an organization based in welfare, which is what my business is, would be for you. And so, I can see how well-meaning people can be very mean, but we do need IEP. We very much need it, because we need to put, like you said, the professionals under one contingency, under one organization, so we can help the horses in a larger capacity.
That's a really great way to put it, and that is what we're there for. And a few things you've said there, imposter syndrome, I think that's a really big one, and I've had that, and I have it still, and it's a real devil, isn't it? But it's something I think that even seasoned professionals, I would say, probably get this, especially when you're in an environment where a lot of people around you are not on the same page as you. So to have a support network where you know that there's like-minded people that have been right in your shoes before, and I think that we need to show the same empathy to each other as we have shown to our animals. I think we're all animal people, but we do need to show it to each other as well. And in ICAN and ICP, that's what we do, and we're all in it for the same reason.
Yeah. Well, I know for ICAN, our goal for ICAN is to network, is to
Yeah.
my cat just woke herself up and she's like, oh my goodness.
Oh, okay.
So if you heard a big stutter, that was her going, oh my goodness, I just woke myself up. So for ICAN, our goal is to be a networking organization. We're the umbrella of certified professionals or force-free professionals in organizations, like charity organizations, who promote the same principles and who have standards and ethos similar to ours, which is again force-free animal training and force-free animal welfare. And so I think for us, it's very important that we share people like you and share what you do, because we want people to learn about you so they can connect with you. And that's why it's so important for us to share your posts and to share what your events or anything that you're doing.
And we truly appreciate that, because I think networking, we've got such a fantastic resource with Facebook and other social sites, and I'm not as up with the socials as you, as you know, but there you go. But it's a great facility to have, and we can reach so many people in a few seconds. Yeah, it's a huge benefit for us to fall under the umbrella of ICAN and be associated with. And also it's something that we can offer our members, obviously, is that when they join us, they get automatic membership to ICAN, because we are, we're all together. And if they have been accepted as a member into IEP, that means they do share the same ethos, because we all do. Yeah. So, it's, I don't know, it's just a nice kind of community feel and good opportunities, really, I think, to reach more people.
I have a few more questions. I know that your patron is Ben Hart, who is a spectacular horseman.
We're very proud to have Ben Hart as our patron, and he is super experienced with, and that's the other point that I should mention, is that IEP is not just about horses, it's about all equines. So whether you're involved in donkeys, mules, zebras, if it's an equine, it counts. And he's done so much work with all types of equine all across the world, in Cambodia and various places. But now his organization, Ben Hart's Horsemanship, he helps people on their journey with their horses to learn the science, really, about equine behavior, why they are who they are, why they do what they do, and is a big proponent of positive reinforcement. He's published a number of books. So yeah, we're super proud to have Ben as a patron.
Well, he's fantastic. I've been following his account for years. The other question I have is, how can, let's say, if I was a force-free horse groomer, which, I mean, that'd be I'd love to be a force-free horse groomer because it'd be spectacular. But how could I be a member of the IEP? How could you offer membership?
Okay. Well, we're very approachable. So you can contact us through Facebook Messenger, if that suits, or through email. And I'll put all the contact details in the comment under this video. Is that good?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, and there's an application form, and really it's not a test. It's just to work out at what point in the journey somebody is at, what they're doing, whether they own horses, work horses, what area of the horse world they're in. And then we have an informal chat. And one thing that I would say about membership is that whilst our current members had already started their journey, if there's anybody who is still working in a traditional way or in a natural horsemanship way, and they want to transition, then we would welcome those people as well, because anybody who's starting to think that way, fantastic, that's what we need to do.
And so this is something I wanted to bring up, is I think when we start either dog training or horse training, we all look to the ideas that we were brought up with. And I was thinking about it like cooking. my family, my grandmother and my mother cook a certain way. But now that I have the ideas and we have much more education about cooking, now I can cook with a wider variety of opportunities. And so my mom's just like, whenever I cook, she's like, how do you know to add this and this and this? And I'm like, because there's more knowledge now. And so this is one thing, we're not trying to ostracize anybody. We're not trying to say, hey, you're out. We want to say we have more knowledge on equine, which is again, like horses, donkeys, mules, all sorts of animals. We have more knowledge about their behaviors and how we can help them. And I know, like when I first started, I was a baby trainer. I like to call myself a baby trainer. 10 years ago, the ways that I thought, I've had to look back and say, okay, that was still force free, but it was not as good as I am now because I have the experience. And so we're giving you the experience of decades, with you and with other professionals in the field to help broaden your knowledge base of horse welfare, horse behavior, and horse training to improve the experience at your facility.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point, because I think even going back to when I started, and like many people, it was an animal of mine, a dog actually. She's not with me now, but she was severely damaged when I got her, and she triggered my interest in dogs, which I hadn't had before to any great extent. I loved them, but didn't have a specific interest. And so I studied applied animal behaviour, but it's only kind of even the last year since I've been a part of Andrew's community, and dog centered care, that I've really readdressed some of the learning that I've done. And it's not to say that that is wrong, it's just that, well, there's this as well, why don't we add this in to make it even better? New science the whole time. There's scientists doing wonderful things with studying how brains work in different animals, and so the knowledge grows. We add it into what we already know. We maybe adapt. It's a journey, it's an evolution, but as long as we're always thinking about them at the center of it, then we can only move forward, I think.
Yeah, and I fully agree, because I think this is one thing, is it's easy for us people to create the us and them, and we don't want to do that, because we've all begun in a way that we were thinking, especially with horses. One thing that I want to do is actually, I was very excited to talk to as well, is when I came back here, I was like, okay, I want to get back with horses, because that's one thing that I love. I love being with a horse because they're such majestic animals. They're so intelligent. They're so brilliant. Their emotional intelligence is so expansive. But there's something I might have to look into as things go along, but it was something I really wanted to do. But then obviously I had to deal with other health conditions first. But that was my first thought process, was okay, rebuild my business, but also include horses, because I or try to include horses, but and it's started me on a whole different journey out here, because this is a ranching community. This is shoot, shovel, and shut up community. That was the phrase that was used in the whole 1990s. And especially because we do have that rodeo mentality, which again, like, that is a huge animal cruelty. Horses should not be put into that position because you take away their consent and their choice. But that's the thing, is we've had PETA here, we've had the SPCA here, but we want to create a bridge of communication versus an antagonism. And I think that with horses, we have to give them the choices. We have to help them, even if they do have a purpose in whatever we do. It's giving them the choice that, okay, how can we do this as kindly as possible?
That's it. And yes, and I think you're right. And just thinking about the things that we do with our horses and to our horses, and we decide when they come in from the field away from the mates, we decide what they're going to wear, what bridle, what piece of metal are we going to put in their mouth, what saddle are we going to put, all of these things, and we kind of shove it on, and then we pull them over, and then we're going to get on, and then we're going to go this way, and today we're doing this, and you will do it because I'm your boss and this is what we do. But within that, there is no point where you say, is this okay with you? Is it okay with you if I touch you there? Is it okay with you if I pick your foot up? Is it okay if I put this on your back? You know, so I think there's a lot of education for the kind of communities that perhaps you're talking about. But as we said earlier, it's quite difficult to broach that sometimes.
Yeah, and that's why I think if you're in any way professional who says maybe I'm not comfortable with the traditional methods, I want to learn more, I want to learn about horse behavior, I want to learn about horse welfare, I want to do a better job for the horses in my care, definitely do join the IEP. I know that Karen, she's probably just like, she's just so upset that she's missing this, because she always sends me all the horse stuff for the ICAN page, and she's like, Ruby, post this, and I'm like, okay. Because it's about providing horses choices, and you know, even the bridle, there's some bridles that I've read about that can cause severe damage to a horse's mouth.
Absolutely, yeah, there is. And it's just, I don't know, it reminds me actually of a book that's been released by a lady called Julie Taylor, and it's called I Can't Watch Anymore. And this is a book that's on my list to buy. I haven't read it yet, but I absolutely am going to, because this woman is so inspirational. But it is about sports horses and what we do, and you watch them on TV and it looks spectacular, but it doesn't, because you see these horses with these pieces of metal in their mouths and they're being pulled back, and you think, well, how does that feel for you when you're being pushed over that jump? And you know, it needs reform. The horse sport world needs reform, and there are movements to do that. You know, there are bitless dressage competitions now, which is a fantastic move forward. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do, I think. But as you say, we welcome anybody who's even thinking, I need to make that transition.
Yeah, and you know, going through the teenage years, I remember just putting the bridle on and the horse would always chomp at the bit, and they just say, oh, the horse will just deal with it. I'm like, that's actually not right, that we're forced, that they shouldn't be dealing with it. If they're chomping at the bit, they're uncomfortable. And so this is where we have to step back and say, okay, why are they expressing these behaviors? You know, how can we help them? You know, there are, just like wearing a harness for going for a walk for the dogs, or wearing more comfortable clothes. You know, we're in athleisure right now because we're all in COVID, and do we want to wear like high-waisted jeans anymore, which are uncomfortable? And the way, you know, why is if we want to be in athleisure or like, you know, comfortable clothes, like I like my little thumb holes, you know, why are we forcing an animal, even if it's a different species than us, and even if it's what we perceive as property, why are we forcing them to take something that hurts them or causes them pain or makes them uncomfortable?
It's a big question, isn't it? I think
it's a big,
and I think there is a perception maybe that the larger the animal, the more robust, the less it feels pain. You know, like cattle and all sorts of livestock that are prodded and pushed, but it's okay because they're big, they can take it. But actually, it feels just the same. And there are studies out there that have shown that the back end of a horse that gets whipped has the same amount of nerve endings as we do in our butt. So, you know, imagine being whipped, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, and you know, I think again it goes back to, this is livestock, this is companion animal.
Yeah, quite.
And so we see cattle, we see chickens, and we see roosters and all that sort of stuff, and we say, okay, you know, even horses, we can do this stuff to this because this is our livestock. However we use it, this is how we choose to use it, because this is our property, this is what we're going to eat, this is what we're going to do, you know, eat, use for profit, and then eat. You know, and so it's part of a cycle that maybe I think we are breaking, or we're changing, because now that we know more about their behavior, we know more about science, we can provide them with more choices, we can provide them with consent and force-free training.
Yeah, I think you're right. And actually the recent thing with the cat kicking incident, which is absolutely abhorrent, obviously, But somebody made a point today in the ISAP forum that whilst it is absolutely not okay, it's disgusting. But I think perhaps the public reaction is greater because it's a cat than if it had been a hen or a pig or something that was treated in a similar way, and that does go on every day, 1,000-fold. And perhaps we don't pay enough attention to that. There is a lot of work on farming obviously going on, and it is improving, but it's slow, isn't it?
Yeah, farm welfare is huge concern for animal welfare, and actually why in the 1965, why was it Compassion in World Farming started the 5 animal freedoms. We still have, and that was it 60 years ago, and we still have so much more to go. Like there's pigs that are in containers. That would be a whole different conversation. Before we finish off, do you have any projects that IEP are doing?
There's a couple of plans for this year, because this year I hopefully have a bit more time for it than I did last year. But we are hoping to introduce webinars, which we've not yet branched into. But I'm speaking to a number of really awesome people that I'm hoping to get in for webinars. So webinars will be same as ICB for anybody who knows. They'll be free for members, and there'll be a small fee for others, just so that we can finance, because we're not for profit. And we would like to expand, obviously. We would like to welcome more people on board. We've got some really fantastic members already, and in some very varied fields within the equine community. So yeah, really, I think they're the big 2 plans for this year, and we'll see what develops. But come and join us.
We'll definitely be promoting that. Before we end, I just want to say thank you very much for attending, and
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And we don't have a plan yet for next month, but we'll see what happens. Okay, and recording will stop. And